When this guy comes to the training grounds, everyone looks down on him. They know he's a complete scoundrel, a disgrace to his noble family, but he shocks everyone when he challenges his younger brother to a duel. Everyone is sure he won't make it out alive, because his brother is a genius who has mastered his skills his whole life. Our guy used to be a genius as a little boy as well, but he wasted all his talent by drinking and chasing girls instead of training. Yet when the fight starts, he just laughs at his brother's pathetic moves. He blocks everything effortlessly and finishes him with a single strike. Everyone is shocked, unable to understand how it's possible. Maybe it was just luck. But when one of the strongest knights steps in next, the result is the same. Christian defeats him even faster and humiliates him in front of all the knights. That's when the knight commander loses her patience. She won't let this scoundrel mock her knights and is determined to show him his place. Like everyone else in his family, she considers him lowly trash destined to die drunk somewhere. So she rushes forward with a storm of strikes, but he blocks everything, shocking her and all the knights once again. And just as she gets distracted for a second, he headbutts her straight in the face. She's shocked when she sees her own blood and stops the fight, because she's thrilled to train him and turn him into an unstoppable warrior. You may wonder how this bastard became so strong in an instant. The thing is, it's not the same scoundrel anymore. A genius from the future ended up in his body. Chris is basically a jack of all trades, but a master of none. He's just an average guy with a talent that lets him learn anything in an instant. To make a name for himself, he ended up joining the hero's party. With his talent, he played a significant role in the party, handling all sorts of tasks, which earned him the nickname, the Great Extra. But before he could truly blossom and harness his potential, he met a tragic end when the Age of Destruction began. It was during the time when the Demon King of Carnage, who hailed from the Magic Empire, started wreaking havoc in the Dominion of Light, and Hero Evan was not strong enough to stop him. As expected, they failed, and the Dominion of Light eventually fell into the hands of the Demon King of Carnage. Before dying, Hero Evan had one last wish. He wanted Chris to ascend to the role of hero. He wished he could turn back time and make this last wish turn into reality. However, Chris didn't share the same sentiments. After enduring so much hardship in life, this death felt more like mercy, a gateway to freedom from misery. Even if given a second chance, Chris would rather have been born into a rich family. That was his final thought before he perished and regressed back in time. He was reborn into the body of a young master of the Magic Empire, the very empire from which the Demon King of Carnage hailed from. For extra context, the Dominion of Light is the place where humans live, while the Magic Empire is the place where demons live, which are also called fiends. The place he was born into was the Dark Magic Clan, one of the 12 clans that support the Magic Empire, as his eerie name suggests. From what he understands, he had regressed 15 years back in time, 5 years before the beginning of the Age of Destruction. Now Chris is a rich brat, but the owner of the body he now possesses is far from pleasant. He's inhabiting the body of Christian Van Baron Khazar. According to Chris's past life memories, Christian inherits the noble Van as his middle name, meaning he's part of a branch family. The House of Count Khazar is a branch family of Baron County, also known as the Dark Magic Clan. Although the Khazar family is just a branch, it still holds a lot of power and influence due to its good standing within the Dark Magic Clan. Their wealth only amplifies their influence. To further emphasize the Khazar family's status, there's not a single fiend within the Magic Empire who doesn't recognize their influence. The Khazar family has 2 potential heirs, but the eldest son, Christian, is a troublemaker who always attracts problems. But the crucial thing to note here is that Christian was eventually murdered by his relatives. This is brutal news for Chris, who has just inherited Christian's body and is now about to die. All Chris ever wanted was to be born as the son of a regular rich family with no unnecessary drama. But beating himself up over his bad luck won't do him any good, so he needs to think hard about what to do to avoid dying. He still has 2 years before Christian dies. It's important to note that he was eliminated within the House of Count Khazar, a family that places great importance on honor. This likely means Christian was an absolute good-for-nothing, and thus murdered by his own family in order to avoid any damage to the family's name. So, Chris hopes that if he becomes a nice person and keeps a low profile, he might dodge that death bullet. Now that the issue of dying has been dealt with, Chris starts thinking about living a comfortable life with all the money he has. But his daydreams soon hit a snag when he remembers the Age of Destruction that will start in the future. The Demon King of Carnage started the war to sacrifice humanity and complete Ragnarok. By the time anyone realized this, it was already too late, and both the Dominion of Light and the Magic Empire met their tragic ends because of Demon King's selfish desire. If Chris truly wants to survive, he'll have to figure out a way to stop the coming apocalypse. The Demon King of Carnage is powerful on his own, but he also has an entire army of loyal fiends from the Magic Empire. The only way Chris can stop all this madness is to become more powerful than the Demon King of Carnage. The only way to do that is to become the Demon Emperor himself and sit at the pinnacle of the Magic Empire. He has 5 years before the Age of Destruction begins, which is enough time to come up with a plan. If he succeeds, there's no doubt that the entire Magic Empire will belong to him. Later, we see Christian getting scolded by his father for leaving his room, despite being grounded. The head of the house isn't stomaching the fact that Chris dared to show his filthy mug without properly repenting for the embarrassing incident he caused not long ago. Count Khazar gives him one last warning, making it clear that his next act of negligence will be his last, once his head is chopped off his body. The menacing, almost suffocating aura of Count Khazar is so intimidating that Chris is literally shuddering instinctively. Eventually, he sincerely apologizes for all the wrongdoings he has committed until now. Chris is trying to mend his relationship with Count Khazar because he wants to get rid of the bad image everyone holds of Christian. This is the only way he can move forward with his plans. He continues his apologies, hoping to sway the Count's heart, but it looks like a few words of apology aren't cutting it. The Count has no intention of believing his son's words after all the trouble he has caused. Meanwhile, Chris is trying to figure out what in the hell this bastard Christian pulled off to make the Count lose all trust in him. There are so many horror stories Chris has heard about Christian that he isn't even sure which one is the most recent. So, he reminds his father that he lost a portion of his memories a few days ago. Because of that, he doesn't even remember what he did that made his father lose all trust in him. He goes on to say that, in an effort to remember, he reflected on his past actions, only to realize how awful he had been all this time. He completely owns up to the downfall he caused to his father's reputation. But even with all of this, the Count is still unwilling to believe him. After all, he has heard these excuses countless times before. Seeing no other way to convince his father, Chris decides to go extreme. He sincerely requests to be sent into the punishment cave, offering to spend up to a month there to prove that he has truly changed. Here's a quick explanation of the punishment cave. Apparently, it's a place made to imprison high-status fiends. There's no light, and all 5 of the captive's senses are blocked. It only takes a few days before a captive's mind is completely broken, driving them into madness. With that in mind, Count Khazar doubts Chris would even last a few hours, let alone an entire month. Chris has already considered all possibilities, but this is the only way left to earn his father's trust, so he is willing to take on the challenge. Count Khazar, having seen Christian make countless big promises before, is hesitant. Every time it ended in disappointment. But this time, he's willing to play along and give him one last chance. However, he makes one thing abundantly clear. If Chris fails to prove he's a different person after spending an entire month there, he will be banished from the clan. Chris already knows that being banished is basically a death sentence. There are countless enemies Christian has made in his life, and the moment he loses the protection of the clan, they will all come for his life. Still, my guy accepts the challenge. However, if he succeeds, he wants his father to grant him one favor. Count Khazar scoffs at Chris's confidence but agrees nonetheless, so long as he truly changes for the better, though he highly doubts that's even remotely possible. Later, as Chris sits in his lavish room, a fiend arrives to inform him that the punishment cave has been prepared. This guy's name is Cox, a half-vampire and the butler of the house of Count Khazar. Chris acknowledges his words, and after a while he begins making his way there, carrying a luggage bag on his shoulders. As he walks through the corridors, every servant and household member whispers among themselves. They're all convinced this good-for-nothing must be plotting something again. They recall the recent trouble he caused, insulting the young lady of the Poison Magic clan. The mess was so bad that Count Khazar had to personally bow his head and apologize to the Poison Magic clan. Now it makes sense why the Count was so furious and dismissive of Christian earlier. The humiliation must have been so bad that the man probably wanted to die from embarrassment. Some people in the background even start betting that Christian won't last more than 2 days in the punishment cave. But my guy just smirks in confidence because he knows he's about to subvert their expectations. Meanwhile, his little brother watches from the sidelines, keeping a close eye on him. A while later, they finally arrive at the punishment cave. To emphasize just how dangerous and please don't come closer this place is, 2 Death Knights stand as guards at the entrance. They might look intimidating, but there's no one stopping Chris from entering. However, just as he's about to enter, his little brother calls out from behind. Here is a quick introduction to this puny punk. As you already know, he is Christian's biological younger brother and a model student, Thurn Van Baren Khazar. The rest of the introduction can wait because, out of nowhere, this little guy pulls a fast one on his older brother, stopping the sharp tip of his sword just before Chris's eyes. While our boy doesn't react outwardly, his soul inside him has literally died of a heart attack at the sight of that attack coming. Still, Chris keeps his composure and questions his little brother, asking what he's doing here. It turns out Thurn is just here to remind his older brother how pathetic he is. He warns him that if he tarnishes the family name any further, he might as well be dead. Seeing this feisty little punk, Chris is pretty sure Thurn was the one responsible for Christian's death in his previous life. Chris has actually met Thurn before during the Age of Destruction. He was a fiend famous for curse magic. Anyway, Chris reacts to his little brother with a stern glare. Of course, those intense glares make Thurn shudder, while Chris just keeps his tough guy act and enters the cave, shutting the door behind him. This display of attitude leaves Thurn absolutely enraged, as he's not used to seeing this side of his older brother. Cutting back to Chris, he walks through the dark cave, unable to see or hear anything. There's only the faintest sensation left around his fingertips. Thinking about it, this sensation seems deliberately left there so that prisoners can feel the objects they bring inside. Otherwise, they might starve to death if they can't fumble through their supplies. Still, an ordinary person would quickly feel mentally drained in such a place. But this doesn't affect Chris. After all, he's experienced worse during his time as a treasure hunter. To be honest, having his senses cut off is exactly how he wanted it. This way, he can focus inward and look inside himself. It's the only way he'll be able to fix this wreck of a body. Sure, it will take time and a whole lot of luck, but with the medical skills he learned back when they called him the Divine Hand, plus the bone compression art he modified, he is sure that he can pull this off. And being the rich guy he is now, he has access to magic stones with various properties, so fixing his body in this place won't be a problem at all. He honestly thought he wouldn't be able to get his hands on magic stones since they're so expensive, but it looks like this is one of the perks of being rich. In his previous life, Hero Evan and he had to struggle just to obtain them. His first step will be to use a white magic stone, which will purify any toxins in his body. It might be a boring process, but it's an essential stage. He'll need to meticulously clean the toxin buildup across his body with white mana. Even the smallest mistake would cause immense pain, but for Chris, it's a walk in the park. He can handle it just fine without even putting much effort into it. Meanwhile, back with Count Khazar, he asks his butler about Christian. The butler reveals that Christian obediently entered the punishment cave. He's sure that Christian is going to be so wrecked that he won't even have the strength to call for help. These unsettling words only serve to make Count Khazar even more worried. He starts questioning himself, wondering if it was the right decision to let him go inside. Count reflects on how Christian had such a promising future as a child, so he is unsure how he could have broken apart so suddenly. For a moment, he even starts to question if Christian's exceptional talents went to his head. Regardless of the reason behind his downfall, the Count would rather see Christian die crippled than live miserably. As much as he wants to place faith in Christian's words, he just can't bring himself to do it. After all, this isn't the first time his son has tricked him with smooth talk. Count then questions his butler, asking if he noticed Christian carrying anything when he entered the cave. The butler hesitates to reveal anything, but under Count Khazar's scrutiny, he's forced to open his mouth. He reveals that Christian carried magic stones with him into the cave. Among them were dream stones, which can make anyone hallucinate. The butler fears that since they don't know what exactly Christian is up to, they should open the cave immediately. But Count Khazar responds sternly with a firm no. Even if Christian is plotting something shady, it's all the more reason to let him die there miserably. A month passes, and Count Khazar finds himself standing right outside the cave's entrance. Before Chris even makes an appearance, the Count has already convinced himself that his son is as good as wrecked by now. But of course his expectations are completely subverted when he sees Christian emerging from the cave, with a broad smile on his face. As surprising as it is, there's no denying that Christian has fulfilled his promise by returning as a completely different person. The Count can't help but notice the brightness in his son's eyes, something he hasn't seen since Christian was a child. This change might be admirable, but Count Khazar isn't about to loosen up immediately. He's still firm in his belief that this small achievement isn't enough to convince him that his son has truly changed. However, Christian doesn't back down. He makes it clear that he'll keep working even harder if that's what it takes. Christian is certain his father believes he barely endured the cave, but that's far from the truth. In fact, Christian was so busy training that he didn't even have time to get bored. First off, he optimized his body to master swordplay. Thanks to the white mana stone, he never ran out of juice. But the real game changer was the dream stone. The butler had tried to stop him from bringing a narcotic mana stone into the cave, but Christian was glad he had stubbornly brought them anyway. The hallucinations caused by the dreamstone drastically reduced the time it took for his metamorphosis. On top of that, he created 2 cores within himself. Christian couldn't help but feel proud of everything he achieved in that deadly cave. He was convinced he was a genius. After all, having 2 cores wasn't something you came across every day. Because of this, he hid his light core inside his darkness core. If anyone discovered this, their reaction would be nothing short of explosive. But his luck didn't stop there. He sensed that someone in the cave was hoping he would break down under the hallucinations, but Christian used that as a catalyst to push himself even further. Back in the present, Christian wants to cash in on the favor his father promised him. He requests permission to use the Black Swamp Knights training grounds. Of course, Count Khazar's face immediately twists with annoyance at such a bold and reckless request. As far as the Count is concerned, a good-for-nothing like Christian has no business being there. After all, the Black Swamp Knights are one of the 3 orders of knights that support the Dark Magic clan, and only the most elite knights are allowed to display their skills there. But Christian stands firm. He's not asking to join their order, just to borrow their training grounds. He believes that watching the bravery of the Black Swamp Knights will have a positive influence on him. After a brief pause, Count Khazar agrees, though he issues a stern warning: don't disgrace yourself in front of the knights, or it will end with your death. Christian acknowledges the warning, and before his father can leave, he asks for another favor. Later, Christian arrives at the training grounds. As he's minding his business, some knights in the background start murmuring among themselves, recognizing him as the good-for-nothing young master. The knights don't even try to hide the fact that they're bad-mouthing the Count's son, which speaks volumes about the state of the magic empire. Here, strength matters more than social status. There's another reason Christian wanted to come to the Black Swamp Knights training grounds. He apparently wants access to enter the library. His father had told him that he could only enter the library once he obtained Deputy Commander Melon's letter of recommendation. Only then would Count Khazar grant him the key. You see, the library houses all the dark magic grimoires of the Khazar house, and to learn dark magic, Chris must gain access. While Chris doesn't object to the condition, he's puzzled as to why it's even necessary since he's an important member of the clan. His father reminds him of the time Christian tried to sell the advanced grimoires on the black market. Even Chris has started to question the kind of life Christian led back then. The title, Good for Nothing, is certainly fitting. Now Chris's top priority is to get the deputy commander's recommendation. Among the knights standing around, Chris's little brother is present too. He doesn't waste a second before throwing a barrage of colorful remarks at his older brother. Of course, Christian finds it a drag that he has to deal with this brat once again. But as he thinks it over, a smile forms on his face. This might actually be a good opportunity for him. Thurn walks up to his older brother, orders him to turn around, and never return. He insists that Christian should not throw away the life he narrowly saved in the punishment cave. But Chris remains as sassy as ever, making the brat shudder once again by revealing that it was their father who gave him permission to enter the training grounds. At that moment, another prominent figure walks into the scene. This woman's glare could cut through steel, and it's clear she can't stomach Christian's presence here. Doesn't matter even if the Count gave him permission. For the record, this intimidating lady is Deputy Commander Melon. Her presence alone fills the air with 4-star dark energy, a clear attempt to scare Chris into running away like a sobbing child. But as we know, this is far from enough to intimidate our boy. The onlookers notice how Christian is completely unshaken by her dark energy, and even she tenses up upon realizing how unhinged he seems in the face of it. Christian greets her calmly and initiates the conversation. He acknowledges the wrongdoings of his past and the lack of trust people have in him, but he's ready to prove that he's qualified to use the training grounds. Christian proposes that he will fight against one of the fiends present here and prove himself by winning. Naturally, Deputy Commander Melon dismisses his suggestion as nothing more than a joke. But Christian isn't here to joke around. In a calm tone, he requests that she refrain from using her dark energy during their interaction. He humbly asks for an unarmed duel, as his capacity for dark energy is currently not what it should be due to his debauched lifestyle. Melon considers his request. Even if this is a duel, she can't afford to let the heir get hurt. So she asks him once again if he truly has what it takes to engage in an unarmed duel. Christian remains confident and states that he would like to choose his opponent, none other than his brat of a little brother, Thurn. This infuriates Thurn, who's absolutely livid at being challenged by his good-for-nothing brother. Even Melon thinks Christian is putting his hands into a lion's maw. She warns him to choose his opponent more wisely, considering Thurn is already at 2-star level. For context, 2-star is a level that few 13-year-olds can ascend to. If you don't have the raw talent for it, it doesn't matter if you're 13 or 23. You won't even scratch the surface of this level, let alone ascend to it. But as we already know, Christian is no pushover either. He firmly declares that he wants to fight someone stronger than him, because this is the only way he can prove himself. Fighting Thurn, he believes, is the optimal choice. However, there's a catch. If Thurn is too scared to fight his own brother, it changes the whole dynamic of the duel. Naturally, Thurn falls for the bait and accepts the duel. Soon, the two face off in the center of the training grounds. The other fiends circle around them, eagerly waiting for Thurn to win and for Christian to taste the bitter sting of defeat. But before the duel begins, Christian wants to know how the winner will be decided. He suggests that they fight until one of them surrenders. Melon, clearly displeased with Christian, proposes instead that they continue until one side is completely incapacitated. This way, she believes Thurn will have the chance to seriously cripple his brother, as he wouldn't have the option to surrender. My guy, however, is more worried about his opponent than himself. He doesn't want to seriously beat his little brother. Of course, these jabs rile Thurn up even further, and he's more enraged than ever, itching to show his older brother what's what. Chris seizes the opportunity and makes his first move by slapping the living shit out of his brother. The slap is humiliating and uncalled for, but the duel has already started, so it's all fair game. Thurn tries to slap back, but Christian easily dodges it by simply ducking backward. If Chris is being honest, this is practically an unfair fight with all the odds stacked against him. As a fiend who hasn't even reached 1-star yet, he stands no chance against someone with dark energy. However, in a barehanded duel, things are a little different. Thurn's clumsy moves give Chris the perfect opportunity to strike back, and Chris delivers a gut-wrenching knee smash right into Thurn's stomach. The reason Chris is prevailing in this barehanded fight is the experience he's accumulated from countless battles in his past life. Moreover, if he only counts the dominion of light powers achieved in the punishment cave, he's already at 3-star level. So basically, his brat of a brother doesn't stand a chance. Thurn is looking worse for wear after taking such a beating, and even the onlookers are in absolute awe. Meanwhile, Chris starts throwing jabs to further annoy his little brother. It looks like his silly remarks are doing the trick. Internally, he is having an absolute blast watching this brat struggle. Thurn, on the other hand, is certain that Christian must be using some kind of trick. Christian lets him know there are no tricks at play. It's simply that Thurn is weak sauce. That remark hits hard and Thurn feels the sting. While Chris continues his goofy teasing, Thurn can't take it anymore. He balls up his fist, dark energy exuding from him ominously, and throws a punch. Chris easily avoids the direct hit, but Thurn continues his relentless barrage of punches, none of which even scratch Chris. Eventually, Chris parries one of the punches, and after canceling out his little brother's dark energy, he lands a brutal hit on him. That one punch is enough to make Thurn cough up blood before collapsing to the ground. The spectators burst into murmurs and gossip, believing that Thurn must have let his guard down, or simply didn't want to hurt his trash of a brother. After all, Thurn getting knocked out by his good-for-nothing older brother doesn't make sense. But Deputy Commander Mellon knows exactly what just happened, and it's causing her to go absolutely bonkers with astonishment. Chris, on the other hand, wants Mellon to confirm if he's proven himself, or if there's still something left to do. Mellon, still stunned, confirms that he has indeed proven himself. This confirmation sounds like music to Christian's ears, and now he's ready to set his next plan into motion. Later, sitting in his room, Chris reflects on how he's finally reached 1 star in dark magic. Since he's still not fully accustomed to handling dark energy, and there was a lot of residue left over by Christian, it took longer than expected. As for wielding the power of light at the same time, he'll need to raise his level further before that's possible. Suddenly, his assigned maid, Marie, appears upon his call. She's actually a high-level evil spirit, a banshee. Chris can't help but feel a little spooked to see that they're using a spirit as his maid. He's so creeped out that he even thinks about requesting the Count to replace her. Anyhow, he orders her to fetch some juice, planning to drink it before he starts his training. Marie acknowledges his orders but wants to confirm if she should prepare the juice with human blood, since blood juice tastes far better than anything else. She continues to insist on the blood juice, while Christian, totally disturbed by her morbid suggestions, just wants strawberry juice, nothing more. A while later, as Christian is about to leave to train, the butler calls out to him from behind, suggesting he reconsider going. The butler expresses concern that Christian has been pushing himself too hard lately. He is clearly proud and pleased to see how diligent and sincere the young master has been, even if everyone else deemed him good for nothing. He's always believed in Christian. Christian, however, can see through this bastard's hypocrisy. He shoots the butler a deadly glare, not wanting any validation from a lowly servant. The poor butler quickly apologizes, as he didn't mean to overstep his boundaries. With those words, the poor guy leaves, not before wishing Christian a good training session. Chris, however, feels something suspicious about this guy, but he can't quite place his finger on what's wrong. Later, as Chris walks through the grounds, he notices how the behavior and the look in the eyes of the people around him have become softer and more docile towards him. He sees this as a great opportunity to win them over, little by little. After all, when the iron is hot, why not strike? After putting his bag down, he begins swinging his sword. A fiend takes notice of this and promptly goes to Deputy Commander Mellon to report it. He reports that young Master Christian has shown up at the training grounds again today. Hearing this, Deputy Commander Mellon grows serious, her curiosity piqued by Christian's actions. She can't ignore how impressive his movements were during his duel with Thurn, refined and precise. She's eager to find out what Christian is really plotting. What has her on the edge of her seat is the fact that Christian was able to dispel his brother's dark energy at the perfect moment. This revelation explains how he had control of the battle from the very start. If that's the case, he might even have the talent to surpass Lord Eshid de Baron, who is the direct heir of the main family. But then again, Christian is just a bastard who's already lost his dark energy due to his debauched lifestyle. There's no way he can close the enormous power gap between himself and Lord Eshid de Baron. Mellon steps outside, pretending she's unaware of Christian's presence. When she actually steps out, she notices that Christian has dropped his opponent, Cannon. The onlookers are in awe that he defeated one of their own who is a 1-star fiend. It's unfathomable that this bastard has reached 1 star. Even Mellon can't help but stare in awe. Christian, on the other hand, feels disappointed by how weak these highly regarded Black Swamp Knights are. No one seems to pose a real challenge to him. He wonders if anyone here has what it takes to be a true fighter. Naturally, the fiends who hear Christian's jab grow visibly agitated, seeing how he's throwing shade at their ranks. One of the big fiends, named Torin, steps forward to challenge Christian. Seeing this, Chris merely gestures for the big bastard to come forward. He's absolutely thrilled that these clowns are falling right into his traps. Torin, eager for the fight, swings his sword, and they engage in a fierce back and forth. As they exchange blows, Chris reflects on how he never expected them to obediently teach him their knight's secret techniques. He's taking notes on every movement his opponent makes, mapping out the techniques in his mind. It doesn't take long before he realizes that the swordsmanship technique Torin is using is known as mud swordsmanship, a highly rumored style. After noting the technique, he decides to try it out for himself. The moment he does, he lands a precise strike right across Torin's face. With just that much, the once mighty Torin is kissing the ground. As usual, the other fiends witnessing this fight are in utter awe, including Deputy Commander Melon. She now fully realizes that Christian's previous victory against Thurn was no fluke. Once again, my guy expresses his disappointment. Before all this, he used to hold these knights in high regard, but now they've turned out to be nothing more than punching bags. He then directly throws shade at Deputy Commander Melon for nurturing such weak and pathetic warriors. The fiends on the sidelines know full well that Christian should not be messing with Deputy Commander Melon, and Melon thinks the same. She's sure that Christian's unexpected victories are getting to his head, but my guy is ready to prove his prowess, and to do that, he directly challenges her. Of course, the lady takes the bait. In a fit of rage, she swings her sword so hard that the sheer pressure obliterates the ground beneath them. By now, she is absolutely losing it, her rage bubbling up after the constant humiliation Christian has caused her. This display of power is meant to show that she could take him down in seconds if she had to. My guy doesn't shy away from admitting that she indeed has the upper hand with her full strength, but he argues that it's not fair. According to the rules, the use of dark energy is only allowed against opponents up to 1-star level, and since he is only 1-star level, she can't possibly use dark magic against him. She is only allowed to use dark energy. He claims it's only fair they fight with wooden swords. Melon agrees to his suggestion. Even with this handicap, she's sure she can obliterate his legs with just a wooden sword. No need to waste any time with jibber-jabber. Let the battle begin. Deputy Commander Melon takes the initiative, throwing her sword down at Christian. He blocks her direct attack with his own sword, and they engage in a fierce exchange of blows. Their movements are so fast that the onlookers can barely follow. What's even more mind-boggling is that Christian is holding his own against her. Even Melon herself is starting to get agitated, realizing that no attacks are landing on him. Even though he's just a weakling and shouldn't stand a chance against her, the situation is eerily similar to the previous fights where his opponents failed to land a single blow on him. Seeing the distress on her face, Chris can't help but throw jabs at her, which only further irritates her. She raises her sword, charging it with dark energy, and brings it crashing down. But Christian dodges it with ease, charging at her and landing a hard head smash straight to her face. The impact causes her nose to burst. This strike was a calculated risk from our boy's side. He realized that as long as Melon's dark magic was bound, she wouldn't be able to block such an opening with just physical strength alone. His hunch was right on the money. If Melon were a fiend who focused solely on the sword, that wouldn't have worked. Instead of breaking into a cold sweat after having her blood spilled, Melon bursts into hearty laughter. She finds it kind of adorable and funny because she never expected him to headbutt her. Finally, she admits that she was wrong to look down on him and promises to personally give him the extra attention he deserves to help increase his growth. But then, Christian reveals something shocking. When he headbutted her, he scratched her neck. If his nails had been laced with poison, she would have been a goner by now. Melon sincerely accepts her defeat and is ready to grant him whatever wish he requires. However, she wants another duel with him. Chris has no problem with a rematch, but he makes a request in return. Melon agrees without hesitation. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Chris asks if she can kneel before him. It's a shocking request. For Melon, this is an impossible ask. Her loyalty lies with the main family of the Dark Magic clan, House Baron. Chris acknowledges what she's implying but assures her it won't matter when he ascends as the next leader of the clan, ultimately making him the top dog. Melon is taken aback by this, dismissing it as wishful thinking. After all, there are 5 young lords recognized for succession rights, and they're all direct descendants of the main family. Christian, as a bastard, doesn't stand a chance. Christian flashes a cunning smile, reminding Melon that there's no rule preventing a branch family member from becoming a young lord. Regardless, he accepts the challenge for another duel. However, their next fight will take place in a month, and there will be no restrictions, meaning they can go all out. Melon has no problem with this. In fact, she can already envision the humiliating defeat that awaits him. Chris, on the other hand, warns her not to be too sure. After all, the world is unpredictable. With that, he bids her farewell and promises to see her in a month. He silently vows to make her realize who her true loyalty belongs to. Later, Christian presents the letter of recommendation from Deputy Commander Melon to his father. As he hands over the recommendation letter, he also takes the opportunity to provide feedback on the Fiend's lackluster fundamentals and suggests that more focus be placed on their training. The scene then shifts to a little earlier, where Melon, having faced Christian on the battlefield, reveals everything to his father regarding his growth. Despite his low star rank, he easily defeated opponents with solid foundations, and even Melon herself had been humbled by his unexpected skill. She admits she enjoyed the fight, though the defeat caught her off guard. In the present, the Count continues to stare at his son, taking a long, silent moment to make sure the person standing before him is indeed Christian. Finally, he extends his hand, handing over the key to the library. Later, Christian feels a sense of satisfaction while holding on to the key. Not only did he obtain the library key, but he also earned Melon's trust. You see, Melon is a fiend from the main family of the Dark Magic clan, was once a 6-star high fiend during the Age of Destruction. If Christian wants to take control of the entire Dark Magic clan, he must have her on his side. He hasn't completely won her over yet, but he's confident that a month will be enough time. As he walks away, feeling proud of his achievements, he recalls Count Khazar's confused yet undeniably proud expression. Chris recognizes that even fiends have familial attachments, and he can tell that Count Khazar is a far better father than the one he had in his previous life. For that reason, he promises himself to make his new father proud. Once inside the library, Chris takes note of all the grimoires forbidden in the Dominion of Light, such as blood magic, summoning studies, and curse studies among them. He pulls a book from the shelf, but just as he does, his evil spirit maid suddenly appears, startling him. When he asks what she's doing there, she reveals that she used to be the librarian in this very place. She also admits that she has feelings for Christian, but he doesn't reciprocate her affections. Despite this, she continues to flirt with him, much to his discomfort. On a more serious note, she points out that the grimoire Christian chose is a 4-star dark magic book known as Binding Seal, and she's not sure how he plans to comprehend it. Christian, puffing up his chest, confidently declares that he's a genius. Marie, not buying this crap, nonetheless puts on a supportive facade and praises him. Out of curiosity, she asks why he chose this book, and he cryptically replies that he's trying to catch a rat. The suspense hangs in the air as the scene transitions to Chris doing his usual drills with the fiends. He reflects on his potential suspects that might be the rats he is looking for. First in the list is Thurn, his little brother, who despises him more than anyone in the house. Second is Cox, their butler, who isn't a descendant of the clan but has free access to the punishment cave. Fiends hold the powerful people in higher regard than those of who are of higher social status, so it doesn't make sense for Cox to be circling around a guy like him who is just a weak sauce. It's possible there's a third party behind Cox's actions, but whoever it is wants to bring Christian down. What's most notable, though, is that Cox gave him a dreamstone before he headed to the punishment cave, which is effectively a death sentence. To catch the rats, Chris decides to play the role of the bastard his enemies want him to be. If they see him running his life into the ground, they'll likely get hopeful, making it easier for him to spot who's behind the scheme. He abruptly stops in the middle of his training, throwing a tantrum about how difficult everything is. He quits the drills for the day, deciding to rest. His sudden change catches the others off guard, just as he expected. Later, at the dining table with his father, Chris throws a scene. His father, boiling with fury, feels like a fool for ever thinking his son could redeem himself. In immense disappointment, he leaves the table. As Chris watches the Count sulk, he feels a twinge of sadness, but he knows it's for the greater good of the family. He works hard to spread rumors that he's returned to his old and rebellious ways, like bullying maids while they clean, wasting money like it's water. But when he wants to drink alcohol, his personal maid always makes wine with no trace of alcohol. Chris tries to get her to make real alcoholic drinks because this is part of his plan to catch a rat. He's hoping whoever is behind the plot will think he's back to being the wasteful bastard they want him to be. He then shows his mastery of the Binding Seal spell that catches even his loyal maid off guard. She is left bewildered to see that he has already mastered the spell, but Chris wastes no time in bragging about his genius, something he's been claiming all along. He explains that while all the time he spent causing trouble, he was also secretly studying in order to master multiple spells. Before he can celebrate, his little brother Thurn arrives in his room unannounced. Seeing this, Christian quickly flips his mental switch and instantly transforms from the sober genius into a drunken degenerate bastard, playing the role of a loser. Thurn's eyes narrow with anger as he is finally convinced that nothing has changed about his bozo brother. This angry and intense reaction of Thurn confirms to Chris that he is not involved in any of the schemes against him. Since Thurn is clean, he decides to share a part of his secret with him, revealing that there's a rat in the house, a traitor who wishes to see his downfall. Chris plans to play the part of the reckless fool for now, pretending to be exactly what his enemies want him to be, so they can be easily identified. To further convince his brother, he shows him the wine he's been drinking, letting Thurn smell it to show that it's fake, meant only to maintain his facade. While Chris is still unsure who the rat is, he's certain he's getting closer to luring them out. Just then, a servant rushes in after hearing the sound of breaking glass. Christian immediately returns to his drunken persona, demanding the servant tell the butler that the wine he sent is the wrong one, and to bring him the proper bottle. The servant apologizes profusely before informing Chris that Cox is currently busy. Chris, still acting like a sailor after too many drinks, decides to pay the butler a personal visit. His brother, in the background, can only watch in disbelief seeing how realistically this bastard is performing the role of drunkard bozo. When Christian finally meets Cox, he deliberately flips the bottle of wine over the butler's head, causing it to spill all over him. He accuses him of trying to play dirty tricks by sending him the wrong wine. Cox apologizes and insists that the proper wine will be brought immediately. Chris, however, insists that he fetch it himself. Cox tries to remain calm while explaining that he's dealing with something more pressing and suggests the wine can be delivered later. But Christian continues to push, trying to get a rise out of Cox. Eventually, Cox leaves to retrieve the wine. Chris is astounded by this bastard's patience. Though Cox can mask his emotions, Chris can feel the hostility radiating from him. Once Chris is alone, he begins to go through the documents the butler had been preparing. As he scans the papers, a broad smile spreads across his face when he notices that Butler had been doing embezzlement of funds. If Cox is truly a rat, it's natural that he has tampered with the finances, but there's no clear evidence yet to confirm that he is indeed the rat. Soon enough, Cox returns with the correct wine. Christian, still playing his role, accepts the bottle and wonders if the butler is angry with him for his impudent behavior. The butler, however, appears to be grateful for the opportunity to serve his young master. Before he leaves, Cox relays a message that there are Christian's friends who want to meet him at their usual hideout. Of course, Chris has no idea who these friends actually are. Cox warns him to avoid them, claiming they are trouble. But this only intrigues Chris more, inciting him to meet these mysterious individuals. At the hideout, we are greeted by a lavish spread of food. As Chris sits there, his attention is immediately drawn to the terrified maid serving drinks. He can't help but comment on how these pigs have made the poor girl pour drinks for their fat asses. As she serves him a glass, he notices something off about it. Without hesitation, he throws the wine in the face of the fatty sitting at the table. He does not beat around the bush before accusing them of spiking his drink with something shady. Before things can escalate further, he uses dark magic to knock the maid unconscious, not wanting to traumatize her with the scene that is about to unfold. The group is stunned to see him use dark magic, surprised that Christian has already learned such powerful techniques. But before they can react, my guy slams both of the culprits onto the table, causing blood to splatter. The fatty demands to know why he was attacked. Chris, in response, pulls out a dagger, because he won't tolerate any pretenses from them. After some interrogation, the skinny man finally confesses that they were only following orders from someone who had blackmailed them with drugs he and his friend smuggled. They had been ordered to frame Christian for a murder they intended to commit on the maid. Chris presses them for the identity of the mastermind. The skinny guy hesitates, but in order to make him speak, my guy lets this bastard know who is calling the shots here. Reluctantly, the skinny bastard reveals the truth. Cox is the one behind the plot. With everything exposed, the both guys beg for their lives, promising to do whatever Christian commands. Christian, after a brief moment of contemplation, agrees to spare them on the condition that they follow his orders without question. Just in case, he makes them promise this twice, and once they promise, he uses his binding spell over them. The next day, Cox rushes to Count Khazar to report that Christian has committed murder. He claims that Christian, drunk, killed the servant girl who had been serving his drinks and dumped her body into the river. Hearing this, the Count immediately orders that Christian be brought before the Fiend Court to answer for his actions. At the court, Christian immediately pleads his innocence. The Count, however, is not convinced and insists that the testimonies of witnesses will prove his guilt. Christian calmly declares that the murder never happened, and therefore, the witnesses must be mistaken. To prove his point, Christian points to the maid, who, to everyone's shock, walks into the courtroom perfectly alive and well. The two conspirators begins to panic when they realize that they are about to get screwed. The maid reveals that Christian actually helped her by escorting her home and even giving her money to help pay her rent. As far as she's concerned, it was the two men standing there who tried to kill her. The court erupts in shock, and the two culprits are exposed for their treachery. To hammer the final nail in the coffin, my guy uses his magic mojo and makes his two friends talk like the parrots they are under his command. They admit to giving a false report about Christian taking the life of a young girl. Furthermore, they were ordered by Butler Cox to frame the young master for this murder. Unsurprisingly, the butler begins to panic and starts defending himself as if his life depends on it, which, well, it does. Chris already knew this jackass would react exactly like this, so he had already prepared for it. He addresses his father and requests to borrow his authority for a while because he has a direct question he wants to ask Butler Cox. He promises that this one question alone will separate the milk from the water. His father agrees and promptly gives Cox the opportunity to defend himself. So Cox is advised to stand in the defendant's stand. Before Chris can ascend to jury's stand, his father lets him know that if he abuses his authority, he will be stripped off it immediately. Once Chris ascends to the judge's stand, he proceeds to question Cox with the authority he has been granted. First of all, he wants defendant Cox to swear that he will speak nothing but the truth. Cox, of course, swears right away, not that he has a choice. But as soon as Cox swears twice, my guy uses his binding seal magic on him. Even the people in the courtroom can't help but notice. Their reaction is one of awe because there is no way in hell a mere brat should be able to wield 4-star dark magic. Before proceeding further, we learn a little about this binding seal. Basically, my guy modified the binding seal so it could be used even with a lower star rank. However, it has additional conditions. Chris needs the target to swear twice. Now it makes sense why he made Cox swear twice, and also why he made those two goons promise twice before hijacking their brains. Now that the binding seal is a success, my guy questions this shithead about why he hired those two to slander his name. The binding seal begins consuming Cox's mind when he tries to avoid answering. He manages to endure the pain for a bit, but eventually he reveals that he received orders from someone. The man who gave him the order also threatened him about the corruption he had been involved in with the finances, so Cox had no choice but to comply. Before making Cox admit anything further, my guy wants him to confirm whether he is talking about the embezzlement he has been committing behind the Count's back. After confirming this little fact, Chris proceeds further with the trial, asking about the person who gave him the order. When Cox refuses to speak, the pain intensifies, forcing him to utter the name Sir Eshid. This news drops like a nuke on everyone when they realize that it was the second son of the Dark Magic clan, Sir Eshid de Baron, who was pulling the strings. Cox further reveals that now that he has spilled everything, he will be killed by Eshid. But before Sir Eshid can pose any threat to Cox's life, my guy severs this traitor's head right in front of Count Khazar. Before anyone can start yapping about his bold move, Chris clarifies that he punished the sinner under the authority he borrowed from the Count. The Count then questions Christian about why he deemed Cox deserving of a death sentence. Well, Chris's reason is simple. Even if this bastard were left alive, the Main family would likely fabricate evidence and cover up the incident. And getting on the Main family's bad side is the last thing they can afford. Furthermore, this incident has revealed to everyone how Eshid tried to sabotage him. In the next moment, Count Khazar conjures a portal, and both father and son step into the secret training grounds to have a private chat. After all, there were just too many people in the courtroom. From what the Count understands, the only reason Eshid is causing trouble is because of the succession conflict. The Count knows very well that one family's power and authority are directly tied to the successor they support, so it's only natural for Eshid to feel threatened. However, with things as they stand now, the Count wants to support the first young lady since the first young lord is not an option. But this is then Chris puts himself up as the next option. He wants to volunteer to become the next successor. It goes without saying that the Count is dismissive of the idea. It's impossible. But Christian reminds his father that anyone from a branch family can be recognized as a potential successor if they possess the necessary ability. His father, however, believes that this is only true on paper. Something like this happening in their clan is unprecedented. That's when Chris reminds his father that Eshid sees him as a potential rival, which is the only reason he wanted to eliminate him. The Count does acknowledge that Christian might have been more talented than Eshid during childhood, but as of now, Eshid is far ahead. Chris, however, believes that he has already started catching up, and to speed up his growth even further, he wants his father to use his authority to recommend him for the Sacred Dark Rite, which is set to take place 2 months from now. The Count reminds him that one must be at least a 2-star to even consider participating in the rite. Well, that's the least of Christian's concerns. He promises to reach 2-star within the next 2 months, so he hopes his father will grant him this favor. Well, looks like the Count has no choice but to heed the young master's command. Later, we see servants murmuring among themselves about how much our boy has changed. Rumors are spreading that the Count has been personally training him these days. The training Christian is going through is said to be so tough that even senior knights can barely endure it. We then promptly cut to our boy, who is cutting down stuff with the new sword techniques he has learned. Seeing his progress, even the Count is astonished at how fast Christian is adapting, like he's learning in days. The Count is further shocked when he sees Christian pull off another technique against a training dummy, slicing it limb from limb. Apparently, Chris mixed the mud swordsmanship with the black scythe sword energy, creating an ultimate technique capable of cutting clean through, something mud swordsmanship alone couldn't achieve. Of course, the Count's soul practically leaves his body upon seeing such prowess. Normally, using 2 techniques at the same time would make it difficult to cast curses, but Chris shrugs it off as super easy. In fact, it's barely even an inconvenience for him. 15 days pass, and we see our boy totally drained on the ground. While this dude can pull off complex swordsmanship mojo, he can't handle the strain of cardio after running. What's worse, there's no way to cheat his way out of it since stamina accumulates gradually. As he catches his breath, Deputy Commander Mellon pops up out of nowhere. She's just here to give him a soft reminder about the looming duel, which is just around the corner. She's eagerly anticipating the fateful day when they will exchange blows again. While he's trying his best to improve, she believes it's still not enough to close the power gap between them. Thus, his dream of making her kneel before him is just a thought that exists in his head. But Chris is confident, determined to make this thought a reality. She likes his warrior spirit, so before leaving, she commends him for it and hopes to see him bring out the best version of himself, just so he can entertain her enough. For context, Mellon is currently an upper 4-star. Within a single stage, there are 3 tiers: lower, middle, and upper. Even though Christian is an upper 1-star, he's still way below her level. but it looks like our bro already has a perfect plan to overcome this gap. After all, he's a rich brat now, and he plans to leverage that to his advantage. Later, he meets his evil spirit maid, Marie, who looks drop-dead gorgeous. Since this is their first outing together, she made sure to dress properly. It almost seems like she's turning this into a date. Christian, of course, denies inviting her along. He had only told her to prepare his bags, and that's it. But the way Marie looks so obsessive, it doesn't seem like the poor guy can catch a break. He even asked his father if he could lay off this obsessive, love-struck evil spirit and get an attendant who's human. But his father sadly reminded him of the master-servant contract Christian has with Marie. After all, a high-ranked banshee can't be managed without a contract. What's worse is that if he wants to cancel this contract, he's required to have a deep kiss with Marie. Back to the present, Christian once again reminds Marie that she can't come, as he's headed to a place where they'll encounter a lot of people. He worries that she might end up hurting people with her spiritual energy, which he doesn't like. Of course, Marie starts acting like a helpless, cute, snobbing puppy. After further guilt-tripping him about how she hasn't seen the outside world in decades, she finally charms her way into convincing him. While Christian reluctantly gives her permission to tag along, he still wants her to stay away from other people. The girl literally flips from a sobbing mess to a charming pretty lady upon getting permission. As she starts following him, she's quite curious about the purpose of this outing, to which he says that he wants to rack up some profits. Marie quickly showers him with the gold coins he told her to carry, reminding him that he already has plenty of money. So why does he need more? First of all, he makes it clear that this money isn't enough, and secondly, he wants her to put the damn money back. Anyhow, she continues to guess what he might be after, perhaps more gold or land ownership, but every guess she makes is way off the mark. Once they get to the carriage they're supposed to drive, Christian is hit by yet another uninvited guest tagging along on this journey. And that person is, of course, his little brother. Thurn was expecting his arrival like a snobby brother, something Chris didn't expect. Apparently the kid wants to watch over him, in case he returns to his scoundrel self again. Also, it doesn't make it any better that this man reveals his intentions of gambling. Dude's trying to have a portfolio like the Tate brothers. Gambling isn't exactly a bad thing, especially since they're demons, and it's an activity recommended by their king. To make sure things go right, Thurn wants to follow his brother, which gives Chris the impression that he's really starting to worry for him. He teases the kid about it, causing a funny reaction from his baby brother. Thurn wants to beat him at the game, while Chris is starting to realize he's going to have so much fun exploiting the crap out of him.